welcome to the 25th episode of The Customer and the Service. I am Sean Petrowski, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, my co-host, John Lemazny. How are you, John?
Hey, Sean, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited about tonight's episode.
I'm pretty excited about tonight's episode, too. I have a good story to tell.
Good. Well, if those of you that are keeping track at home, we're probably getting close to 50 hours of content now. Pretty close to it, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. 50 hours of talking about organizations and the quality of service that they provide. And let's hope for another 50 more over the next couple of months.
Here, here.
I wanted to talk about something that's been going on in my life past couple of months, actually. As we all know, I'm a big Microsoft person. I like Windows. I use a Windows phone.
Before you get into this, did you happen to see my post today? It was a repost of the difference between results on Bing and
Yes,
Google.
I did see that.
Any reaction before we start?
I bet you, honestly, that there's no maliciousness there, and I bet it's really just people being jerks. Like, you know, when you used to, Google George W. Bush, the first result would be like, you know, idiot.com or whatever. Remember, like, you know, different people's names would yield results that were ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think what John posted, for those of you that didn't see, was a screenshot of, if you were searching for Linux results, on Bing it would say things like, why does it take so long to install Linux? Why does Linux suck? Or why is Linux so slow?
The phrase was, why does Linux? And
Right.
if you do a search instead on what is Linux, or you know, some other phrase, like the difference is not there for some reason.
I did the Bing side-by-side challenge recently,
Yeah.
expecting myself to like totally pick Google 5 out of 5 times. Didn't happen.
It's a nice search engine. I just don't. I'm admittedly a Google fanboy, which is what makes this so interesting, your topic tonight, because it's going to be very difficult for me to convince you that Google is doing things in your best interest. It's going to be impossible for you to convince me that they're not.
Well, I don't think this is going to be an argument to try and sway either or. I think I'm just pointing out some changes, I think, in Google's operational philosophies that I think people need to be aware of.
Let's talk about it. So,
All right. So,
go ahead and move back in.
all right. So as I was saying, I'm a Windows user. Have been for pretty much my whole life. You know, I've used OS 10 and Mac products also for a big chunk of that time as well. I've dived headfirst into the Windows Phone world, so I'm on my second Windows Phone, Windows Phone 8, and I'm also running Windows 8 on multiple devices. I have my home desktop, I have a Surface, and I also have a Windows RT Lenovo laptop also at work that I use, which I love more than anything in the world. So Windows 8, you know, I'm really going forward with it. What did you say?
I said that doesn't sound right.
What, a Lenovo laptop that I love more than anything?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you love me more than you love that laptop.
Well, that is true.
Crystal more than you love that laptop.
Well, that too. But if you use this laptop, I think you'd be impressed too. Anyway, so for years, one of the things I've always loved about Google, and let's start the conversation off right. All of my basic online services for the past 9 years or so are Google services. Gmail is my primary email platform. I have all of my other email accounts coming into Gmail so I can send and receive. My calendar is Google Calendar. Google Docs I use. You know, the list goes on and on. YouTube, Google Plus, minimally, but I'd still use it.
You populate that black bar.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm using it's all the way across
Well, I think it is for
for
everybody, but I'm
everybody.
saying you navigate to those places and use those services.
Absolutely, and my contacts are all in Google. Use it as my primary server for that.
By the
So
way, do you happen to know of a CRM solution that uses Google Contacts?
yeah, Salesforce.
Salesforce does?
Yeah, because Google is always advertising it in Google Apps that it integrates with Google Apps. So I would imagine it works with. Might not work with the consumer Gmail, but if you have Google Apps, I would
Yeah,
guarantee it integrates with that.
I have Google Apps for lemonized.com, so
So Salesforce,
sweet.
and
Thanks.
you can launch that from the Google Apps dashboard.
All right.
Anyway, so I'm heavily invested in the Google ecosphere. Okay, had Android devices in the past. I have an Android tablet right now. So I don't consider myself to be anti-Google. I've been a supporter of Google's for a long time. And one of the things I've loved about Google over the years is that Google always made their tools available on as many platforms as possible. I had a BlackBerry for a period of time. I could get a Gmail app for it. I could get all kinds of Google Calendar app. On the Mac, I used to have the Gmail Notifier app. You know, the list goes on and on of things that Google made available on many different platforms to make their users comfortable and that they could fully utilize the different services that they provide. I should also mention that my primary browser now is Chrome. I've been using Internet Explorer basically my entire life, dabbled in other browsers, but always went back to IE. This summer, I finally switched to Chrome and really haven't looked back. So there you go. There's another example of a Google product that I use every day. A few months ago, Google announced that they were going to be discontinuing the use of Microsoft ActiveSync technology, which is basically what allows Gmail to serve as push email, push calendar, and syncing of contacts, right? So all that syncing that we take that basically creates a Microsoft Exchange-like environment powers the Google platform so that people can use their smartphones and sync their information across multiple devices. So Google announces, we're not doing that anymore. So by them doing that, that has crippled my ability to use Gmail to its fullest capabilities on my Windows phone, my Windows 8 desktop, my Microsoft Surface, and my Lenovo Windows 8 RT laptop.
Let me just be perfectly clear. So they are removing the ability to synchronize with Exchange Calendar.
No, they're moving the technology that has powered Google's push infrastructure to mobile devices like tablets and smartphones has been Microsoft's ActiveSync technology.
Oh,
Microsoft
ActiveSync, yeah.
Microsoft has licensed out ActiveSync to providers to power their own. You know, I don't have to use Exchange server, but I can have my own email environment and license ActiveSync from Microsoft as a tool to leverage additional features. So Google has done that for years, and they're discontinuing that support. They have discontinued it as of, I believe, April 1st.
Do you know what the reason is? Are the public, you know, they could have any number of reasons. Maybe they're just upset at Microsoft. Do you know what they stated as the reason for it?
There was really, if I remember correctly, there was really no specific reason. There was a bunch of kind of like vague, what I consider to be excuses. One of the things that was interesting to me was that when they announced this, they said, but don't worry, we're going to be replacing ActiveSync with some open standards. Okay, so IMAP would power email, which it does in Gmail anyway. Then they would be embracing CardDAV for contact syncing and CalDAV for calendar syncing. And Microsoft responded, okay, we appreciate the notification of the shutdown of ActiveSync. We will be updating our mobile devices to support these new open standards that Google is implementing.
Incidentally, you know that CardDAV and um, other standards in that area include, they have like 30 standards. There's one for recipes. There's one for uh, resumes, H-resume.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Well, don't toot your horn yet. So I thought this was a pretty good compromise. Okay, so they were going to be instituting these open standards. Microsoft promised to adopt them in their Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 ecosystems. I figured all would be well. Google then even announces that they're going to extend the deadline for Windows Phone devices. So if I have a Windows Phone and I've been using calendar, contacts, and email via the push, as long as I was activated and using it, I would get to be able to use it until July 31st, which was great. So people that already had Windows phones set up, they would still have access to their information July 31st, until July 31st of 2013. And new devices would be disabled on April 1st. So sometime, this was announced back in the fall, October, maybe November. Around March, Google made another announcement about this, that they said that they were not going to be supporting CalDAV for calendar syncing anymore for anybody. The CalDAV would be going away, and that they would be what they would call whitelisting certain developers, one of which was Microsoft, but they were only going to whitelist them until July 31st, when the ActiveSync shutdown happened completely. So they were, now here they are, abandoning the open standard that they have championed and said that they were going to use to replace their calendar syncing, and they're not utilizing it at all. So there are actually other people who use other apps that that used to connect with Google Calendar now, that haven't been fortunate enough to be whitelisted, and now they're completely left out in the cold. And that happened on April 1st.
Let's take the technologies away for a second.
Sure.
And let's talk about what you need to accomplish.
I'm not looking for a solution because I have
there might be somebody else in your situation
sure.
who maybe is, and I'm interested. I understand that you're upset, and that's why you are making a decision to move away. But somebody else might actually want to solve this problem as opposed to just be upset about it.
Sure. I did solve the problem. So before I give my solution, let's talk about it. So the important things for me, like I said, I have an Android tablet, multiple Windows 8 devices. I have a Windows 7 computer that I use at work, 2 of them, and I have an Android tablet, and I want to be able to sync contacts, email, and calendar information across all those devices, utilizing some free service. Okay, so that was the problem. That's why I used Google, because it was free and it offered me all those solutions with free of charge in a wonderfully easy, convenient environment.
But here's my question. If you are using those services, such as Google Calendar, that takes care of your Android device, any Android devices, it takes care of any standard machine, because you have the ability to just navigate to the cloud at which point you are looking at the synchronized data. Anything that uses apps that supports Google applications, which is most devices, will automatically sync your contacts, your calendar, your email. The only thing that I see left out in the cold, unless I'm mistaken, is probably your Surface, and that's because Microsoft doesn't have a calendar app for Google Calendar.
This is where you're mistaken. Google, that was true. What you just told me was 100% true until April 1st.
I don't understand. If I have a Linux box in front of me, I'm using Linux in order to make this video connection with you.
Sure, sure.
It is not using ActiveSync. I'm able to get my Google Calendar data, my email, my contacts. Why are you not?
Well, how are you accessing those?
Through a browser.
Okay. I don't want to access my information through a browser
Ah,
because I have no problem doing it on a laptop or a desktop. In fact, that is how I primarily Windows 8 has its own mail client. I don't use it. Has its own calendar app. I don't use it. I use right now, because I'm still not completely removed from the Google ecosphere, everything I access on a desktop or a laptop is through the browser.
right.
Okay.
That is the way. That is the way that Google has built their systems, is to be cloud-based. That's why they have Chrome OS, for example.
Well,
And
that wasn't the case for years.
I'm sorry.
That wasn't the case for years. For years, they provided that cloud interface, but they also offered an infrastructure to support mobile devices, and that is what has changed.
Are they not moving towards their own best end? In other words, isn't this part of their philosophy to say, why are we still mucking about with individualistic solutions that don't support standards when we can simply have either a browser interface or a dedicated application that does these things?
I'm fine with the dedicated application, and also fine with the argument that we're going to shut down these proprietary channels and embrace open standard channels.
Yeah.
But as I told you with the CalDAV example, they said they were going to embrace CalDAV as the calendar syncing platform, but they've reversed that stance, and now there's no calendar syncing channel at all except for Microsoft and a few other developers.
Okay, so I understand that issue. They suggested a standard and then revoked the support for that standard.
Mm-hmm.
What about simple iCal synchronization?
Like
the ability to subscribe to Google Calendar through any of the 3 synchronization links that they offer.
that works on desktops and laptops, not mobile devices. The native calendar apps in Windows and iOS and Windows Phone do not support the subscribing of calendars via links, and that's true. I think of Android as well.
No, I don't need those links in Android because I have a dedicated app.
No, I'm saying if you had an iCal link to another calendar, not an Android calendar, you would not be able to subscribe to it in the Android calendar app. Is what I'm trying to say.
And Android Calendar, of course, is Google Calendar. It's one and the same. I mean,
Sure.
You could, I guess, subscribe to other iCal sources, I'm pretty sure. But again, so you'll have to forgive me because Surface is not, I don't have a Surface. I've only touched one once or twice. It's a very nice device. They have apps, right? They have applications.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a dedicated Google Calendar app.
They have a dedicated calendar app that's developed by Microsoft. That was
Dedicated Google Calendar app.
no, Google refuses to develop at all for the Windows Phone 8 platform and the Windows 8 operating system. They have publicly stated that they will not develop any dedicated apps for those platforms.
Okay. Okay, I see your issue.
Mm-hmm. They've taken a stance against Microsoft for whatever petty reasons that they've decided to. They still offer these solutions for users of OS 10. You know, I can still utilize many different services that Google provides in Apple's environments, iOS and OS 10, no problem. In fact, Google has developed dedicated apps for iOS, so I can use a specific Gmail app. But they have decided we're not going to develop anything for Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. But I take that back. There are Google search apps for the phone and the desktop, but that is it. No Gmail, no Google Calendar. No other apps from Google.
So what is your solution instead?
My solution instead was to find an alternative environment that provided the same functionality that Google did for years for me, um, and that turned out to be Microsoft, embracing their Outlook.com platform. Now, this is not something I've used Outlook.com. I thought it was a very slick interface, thought it was nice. However, I still preferred Gmail. Gmail was still my preferred web mail client of choice. Love the integration of the chat, the calendar, everything. And now with what's happened over the past few months, I've had to rethink that, and I've decided that I'm slowly switching all of my mail, all of my calendar, and all of my contacts into the Microsoft environment.
Which is, it's nice that you can do that.
It is, and you know what? I appreciate. There's one thing about Google: my data is not trapped. I have the ability to extract my data, my contact information, my email, whatever I need to get out. I can get it out very easily, and I appreciate that, because in the past that has been a problem with other providers for me, not being able to get my data out. But I do appreciate that with Google.
So have you already made the transition?
Not yet. I'm kind of in between right now. So all of my email accounts that I had in Gmail, like my Rider email and a couple other accounts that I had, have all been moved to Outlook.com. I now have a fully functional Outlook.com email address. I never had Hotmail before. In fact, my username for Microsoft account was always my Gmail address. I finally switched that to an Outlook address. So right now, the only things I'm using Google for are still using Gmail and Google Calendar, but I'm waiting for some features that Microsoft has announced that will be implemented in Outlook soon. Once they are implemented, then I will make the full switch over.
Sweet. And you should be able to export your calendar and import it into.
Yeah, I actually have a shared calendar with Crystal. She, I would never ask her to remove herself from the Google ecosphere. Was able to use the private iCal link and subscribe to her personal calendar with Outlook.com with no problem whatsoever. So I'm able to still see her calendar and add events to her calendar via Outlook.com, just like I used to be able to in Google Calendar. So I'm not losing that. And there you go. So really, the real thing that's frustrating to me is that I'm losing my push email capabilities because IMAP does not do push, and I'm losing my calendar syncing capabilities. The contact thing, Microsoft already adopted CardDAV, so I can get my contacts on any device with no problem now. So that was not an issue at all. They implemented that very quickly. But the calendar syncing, Google said, no, we're not going to do it. And they reversed their stance on that. And the IMAP non-push is a deal breaker for me. I need to have push email. So that's where I'm at. That's why I'm leaving. And I think it's pretty crappy for a company that's prided itself on providing infrastructure that would work on no matter what device. They wanted people to use their services on as many devices as possible. They've now reversed that stance, and they're becoming another Apple. They're becoming another Microsoft. Well, Microsoft of 5 years ago, if you will. And now Microsoft is providing those services that Google used to. This is weird. It's weird to me. I don't understand that. But if you had told me 5 years ago, Sean, you're going to be moving to Outlook or Hotmail, whatever you want to call it, I would have told you were crazy. But here we are now, April 22nd, 2013, and I'm announcing that that's where I'm going.
Well, if you told me that 5 years from now that I was going to have a Hotmail account that I used actively, I would definitely say that you were out of your mind.
Well, luckily my email address is not a Hotmail account.
I actually have a Hotmail account.
That's amazing.
I used to, man, I was deep in the Microsoft camp when I first started.
Well, I wasn't. So that's where I'm at, and I'm curious to hear what I mean, you've just kind of listened to me bitch now for the past 20 minutes, and you haven't really offered much thought about this. But what is as someone who prides themselves on open standards and ubiquity across devices, what is your honest opinion of all this?
So I'm a bit disappointed that Google saw an option and decided not to implement it. But at the same time, there are many other options that it offers for that synchronization. The fact that they choose not to develop for a platform is their prerogative. That nobody forces.
No, absolutely right. Not disputing that.
And theoretically, some third party, because Google does offer synchronizable files. In other words, they offer those links in HTML, in iCal, and in XML. XML, you cannot get more open than that. You can go see the API for the XML file, or go look at the file, see the structure, and develop an app if you are a Windows developer or a Windows 8 phone developer or whatever, and go make an app that pulls that data and synchronizes it with whatever calendar system you want. If I had a calendar that I was building from scratch, I would theoretically be able to use that XML file that is able to be made publicly available for any of my Google calendars and be able to synchronize that. There's also openness and availability to the Google Contacts database, because I can, for example, go to a third-party social media platform, type in my username and password for Gmail, and have it go get all my contacts. It's
not true for Facebook.
That is a choice of Facebook's, not a choice of Google's.
I know that.
So my argument is that the onus is not on Google. Google is already making these options available. The onus is on whoever wants to work with those open standards in order to have that data flow. Google is not stopping that data from flowing. So I can understand why you're upset, you're disappointed, but I think that you are pointing the finger in the wrong direction, because Google already has open standards in use that can easily be used in order to solve this problem. If you were a developer and wanted to make your own solution for this, given the open nature of the solution that Google provides, you could do that yourself.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that your answer is really truthful, because while it is true for a traditional operating system like Linux, like Windows, like OS X, there is tons of software, including native operating system clients, that do interface well with those open information feeds that you're discussing. That is not the case for mobile platforms. iOS and Windows Phone and Symbian and the list goes on, do not work with those iCal XML feeds.
Hold on, let's not bring Symbian into it, because that's ridiculous. Let's not even talk about BlackBerry. Okay, let's just talk about Windows Mobile, or Windows Phone, Android, and iOS.
Mm-hmm.
All of those platforms have the ability to gather data from a remote source. For example, the browser on a phone has to use HTTP in order to go to a HTTP server, start a draw of data, usually an HTML or PHP file,
mm-hmm.
and be able to have that processed, either on the server side or on the application side. The same is true for the calendar server. The calendar server provides, at the most basic level, the server provides a file service that sends out the data in an XML file.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody develops a mobile application that can use HTTP, for example, as a protocol, in order to go gather that data and pull it, that data is human readable data. It can then be pulled and put into a database on the mobile platform.
I just want you to know that I'm in the native Android calendar apps right now. Neither of them support the ability to subscribe to a calendar that is not Google Calendar.
Well, that's fine. But I'm saying they don't need to, because they offer, in the Android calendar, it's connecting to Google Calendar.
Sure, but you're saying that, you know, they offer these open standards.
They offer the open standard on the server side. The Android calendar app, I'm surprised that it doesn't allow you to subscribe to a third-party app. But I can also, on the Android platform, go and install any number of calendaring options that can subscribe to third-party calendars.
And I'm sure there's an application for iOS and Windows Phone that does the same thing. But the complaint that I have is that these are two mobile operating systems, just like Android, that were designed with native built-in functionality that relies upon that connection in their native apps. And Microsoft now has been left out of that, and who knows if iOS one day will be left out of that too.
I don't think that's right. If a Windows mobile developer wanted to develop an application that went and grabbed an XML file off of a publicly accessible server, they would be able to do that.
Well, I don't think that's true, because why hasn't Microsoft said then, okay, well Google has discontinued CalDAV, so we're going to develop an app that then uses the XML feed. I think that there's a reason that people are not saying that's an alternative.
Because I don't believe that I'm highly biased. I don't believe that the onus is on Google to provide solutions on top of solutions that already exist.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I think that there is something about iCal or the XML feed that prevents those feeds from being viable solutions on mobile platforms. Because why wouldn't other corporations that have relied upon this Google connectivity for years then embrace that as an alternative when Google's announcing the shutdown of ActiveSync and then their own open standard of CalDAV?
I personally think that it's probably because open standards already exist that can be used. But let me just verify what you just said. If I go into calendars to display and calendars to sync. So, for example,
tell me where you are so that I can go there too, and everybody else can follow along as well.
I'm in my Android calendar,
okay,
and I click on my menu button.
The blue one or the yellow one?
The non-physical screen button for opening up a menu. In other words, there's home, there's search, there's back, and then there's menu.
Yeah, I know that, but which calendar? Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
Okay.
Which calendar?
Because Google has the two apps. There's corporate calendar and then there's Gmail. The Google Calendar.
I don't have corporate calendar.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Google Calendar application.
So the blue one.
The Google Calendar application.
Yes.
So if I go into calendars to display, I have several calendars here. I have day of the year calendar. I have my personal calendar. I have a meetup calendar. I have a schedule for my boys' calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I have sunrise and sunset, and I have weather.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I have all those things is because I have subscribed to those in the Google Calendar app,
Yep.
which makes it available to me in my phone.
Here's mine. I don't know if you can see it, but let me go back. I'm subscribed to Crystal's calendar, like I said,
Yeah,
and it shows up in my list. I don't know if you can see that, but it's there.
right. So if you can see that data there, then you would be able to.
So you're saying if I subscribe to an iCal or XML feed via the web browser, it'll show up here.
Exactly right.
Okay.
So,
Well, I know that's true for. Here we go. I just realized that I have to eat crow now because I have my Outlook calendar, Outlook.com calendar, subscribed to Crystal's via the private feed. It is a calendar that I can display. So you were right.
so that's what I'm saying. They are providing solutions that are based on standards that anybody can make an umbrella solution for. Whether or not somebody chooses to actually do it is another question. It's not practical for the average developer who's hoping to either get a following or make money to create a calendar app that uses Google Calendar as the basis for as the source for its data, because most users on Android already have the Google Calendar app installed, and they get the phone. So what is this third-party developer who is probably a one-person operation going to do to outdo Google with their own service, their own app, their own? There may be a solution for that, but it's unlikely that they're going to go through the trouble to develop an app when they don't have the team that Google has in order to do this development, to do the testing, to do the bug squashing, to do all the work that's involved in such a massively deployed application. It's not stopping anybody from doing it. It raises a question of practicality.
No, well, that's not my point.
That is my point.
Okay, that's fine.
It doesn't make sense for Google to develop yet another solution.
I'm not asking them to.
You are, though.
I'm asking them to continue offering the service that they've provided for years, for the last 9 years.
They have been cutthroat. They killed Google Reader.
I know that. And that's another thing about that Google's done recently I wanted to mention.
I'm not particularly happy about that, but I understand why they did it.
What is your opinion of why they did it?
It is not Eric Schmidt and the rest are solely focused on what is well adopted, what is actively used, and what is promoting their advertising. So if anything doesn't fall into those categories, it gets cut. They killed Buzz, they killed Reader, they killed a whole bunch of things. And very often the reason is when we look at actual adoption, actual usage of these applications, they're relatively low. I'm a core audience member for Google Reader. I love the application. However, I never used it. And the reason I never used it was because there are some great third-party solutions that only used Reader's OPML file. In other words, Feedly, for example, or any number of these applications that allowed you to sign in to Google Reader in order to get all of your feeds to populate their content on their application. Google was, I'm sure, looking at that and saying, we're not even seeing any eyes from those connections. We don't get any advertising revenue despite the fact that our servers are churning to get out that data. We have become a hub. The same thing with FeedBurner. So it makes sense that they were pioneers in that area, and that other solutions have come along that have surpassed what Google Reader ever was or could do, such as Feedly, one of my favorite applications in the world. And Google's probably saying, we're spending all this money in order to keep this service up and not really seeing any revenue out of it. Other people can do this. Let's allow the market to emerge with new blood. In the same way as somebody can solve this problem that you have with synchronization. They make the files available, and you can go and develop an application that makes use of that file, of that synchronizable file.
I'm just surprised, though, that it sounded like you acknowledged it, sort of, that a company like that you have often identified as a champion of openness and open standards and ubiquitous and platform agnosticism has now, within the past few months, slowly eroding that confidence in those areas.
I disagree. ActiveSync was not an open technology. And CalDAV, although it's an open technology, is only at best an equivalent to the XML file that they make available already. Why should they double up?
Okay.
Agreed?
I see where you're coming from. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree here, but
okay.
Well, I'm actually shocked at what you're saying today. I've been thinking about this conversation all day and how it would go. This is not how I thought it would go at all.
Did you think that I would be aghast at the Google giving up on an open standard?
I did, actually. I did.
I'm a little disappointed, but I can see why, and I don't think that it is as dire a situation as your point of view indicates, because there are other ways that this could be done.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it will. I'm not saying that some developer is not going to. I'm not saying that somebody's not going to pop up and all of a sudden solve this problem, but I would not be surprised, because the pieces are there. It just needs to be put together. It needs to have somebody to champion that. And the fact remains that Google does offer open solutions for calendaring sync and contact sync, and offers things like IMAP for email sync or Gmail sync. So you do not need to use a Google application in order to get at that data. You just need the API.
All right. Well, that isn't a good enough answer for me. And you can laugh, but I'm just saying, whether I was using an iPhone or a Windows phone, the decisions that they've made against the Windows Phone and Windows 8 platforms over the past few months have alienated me and eroded my confidence in Google as a company, and that is why I'm leaving Google for Outlook.com.
We should make predictions.
Okay.
A year from now,
Mm-hmm.
will you be back on Google?
Absolutely not. I will still maintain my Gmail address because it's been my primary email address for years.
Are you going to do forwarding?
Mm-hmm. And this is the feature I'm waiting for them to add: the ability to send as my Gmail address from Outlook.com without anybody knowing I'm using Outlook.com. Once that is enabled, which I'm told will be enabled soon, I'll be replying to my Gmail as my Gmail from Outlook.com.
Okay.
I can do that right now, but it does that whole on behalf of shit, and that's what they're getting rid of.
So what this brings to light for me is how much I appreciate being able to have a difference of opinion with a friend, especially over something that I'm passionate about, like technology, or design or art or any number of things, and to be able to have a reasonable discussion where we discuss the facts of the issue and be able to do so with not only a civil tone, but a truly learning-oriented atmosphere in the conversation. I always appreciate talking about these things with you.
Well, I do too, and I myself have fallen victim to conversations that have with quote unquote fanboys that go off the rails in a very negative way. I know you have been involved in conversations like that, some very public conversations, and that breaks my heart that you can't have a conversation like this with other people that you know. And for the most part, I'd say 90% of the people I can talk to about these things, I can have a conversation like we're having right now with them. But there is a small percentage of people that I know that I would not be able to, and that breaks my heart as well. So, again, it's wonderful to be able to talk about these things, educate people that are listening to us that may not really care enough about what's going on. And like I said, an educational environment, letting people know what their options are, what they can do, and you and I still remaining friends at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I respect your decision to move away from the platform if it doesn't meet your need. I'm fairly certain that Google would say, "We're sad to see you go, but we understand why you're going, and if you ever want to come back, here's the door."
Well, if they would just develop a Windows 8 app or a Windows Phone 8 app, just like they did for iOS, it wouldn't be a big deal.
They could do that.
They could, but they won't, and they've purposely said that they won't, and that's what perturbs me as well.
Well, I have to look more into it
You
because
should.
yeah, I recognize that I'm highly biased about the whole situation. So, anything else you want to any final words?
No, that's it. We can close the book on that one.
All right. So, as usual with these discussions that you and I have, they often have to do with personal interactions I've had in regards to customer service, sometimes horribly bad, and every once in a while, very, very good. And with each of these interactions, I sometimes am a little torn about how much detail to give, because sometimes it's a very personal interaction. And so this one might be a little bit more one of those, a more personal interaction. So as we've talked about on the show, I recently left my position at Princeton University and have focused pretty solely on consulting, which has been fantastic. I've been very fortunate to have a long list of people who are aware of my services and trust me, and I've been doing well. I mean, it's not a trickle anymore. There's a stream. So that's really great. At the same time, I want to give myself a little bit of breathing room, because it might not always be a stream. Sometimes it might go back to a trickle, despite our best effort, right? And it's a lot different, as you know, when you have a 9-to-5 job, because at the very least, and as I have relied on for the last 14 years. Rider University was my first job out of college. My first, stable, regular, ongoing career job. I had many jobs before that. But having a paycheck at the end of the month means that, you have a budget and you know exactly what your budget is requiring, and you're going to have a gross and it's going to come in and blah, blah, blah. But with consulting, if you have 10 jobs, it's a certain amount of money. And if you have 20 jobs, it's a different amount of money. If you have 10 jobs and 6 of them are paying jobs and 4 of them are hopeful, then, you can run into an issue, and there's only so much time in a month and blah, blah, blah. So in order to strengthen my bottom line, I decided to free up some money. And the easiest way for me to do that, although I was reluctant to do it, was to go to my 403B, my TIAA-CREF, which I have been building since I started at Rider. I guess 6 months. There was a 6-month waiting period or whatever, maybe even a year. And I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. Because I was a little panicked at the time when I called, I, in my mind, was saying, I'll just close out the account and get a check. And of course, because I was recently divorced, a lot of that money went to my ex-wife. This is what I mean about maybe more information than is practical for this talk. But these things happen. And so I was thinking it would be really nice to have that money available to some degree, and I wanted to see what was possible. So I called up TIAA-CREF, which they make their contact information incredibly available. It's on everything. Comparatively, there are many organizations that do not use phone numbers that you can even get a human at, if you even get a phone number. But anyway, TIAA-CREF is not like that. I called up, and within, I guess, about 15 minutes, I was talking to a human, and I explained my situation, and he expressed, how sorry he was for the change and blah, 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 and it was very nice. And I said, is it possible for me to simply cash out, to take all my money and run? And he said, probably not. And I said, well, what's possible? And he said, well, there's some money that's available to you and some money that's not. And he said, you understand the huge tax issues. You'll probably end up paying about 25% in taxes between federal and state. And I said, I understand that, but I need fluidity. And he said, well, let's talk about your various options. How much do you actually need a month? And I said, well, blah, 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 blah. And we continue to have a conversation. I just wanted to give a shout out to TIAA-CREF because the obvious training and skills that somebody who was able to answer me and guide me in making decisions about my money, I felt the same way that many people express that they feel when they talk to me about technology. I felt like I went in and had very little understanding or knowledge about anything other than there was some money there that I could potentially get my hands on. He led me through all of my options. He walked me through all the forms that I had to sign. He explained the various pros and cons of different situations, and he did it with such patience. I want to be like that guy when I do technology consulting. I want to be like that guy who was limited to just a phone. And he was courteous, he was patient, he was kind, and he was incredibly knowledgeable. If I can do that, I'm doing it right.
Are you going to write a letter?
I'm going to contact the company. I'm probably not going to write a letter.
You should write a letter. Handwritten in blood.
I don't write letters.
Write it like this, and then write it out.
But then it'll be just like a bloody mess.
Yeah, I know.
You're talking like a pinprick.
Yeah, just sign it. Just write it, and then John in big letters.
I'll do a thumbprint like Garfield,
Make your mark.
like Snoopy.
Yeah, right, with his paw first. Well, I'm happy to hear that, because oftentimes we call companies and we obviously talk to idiots that are reading off a script. So for a man to provide you with actual sound financial advice over the phone, it's pretty incredible. And like you said, the training that must be required must be extensive. And obviously it shows when you call TIAA-CREF. I unfortunately have never had to call them. I am a customer of theirs. I haven't had to call them. So if I ever do, I know that I'll be getting good service, and I'm glad to hear that.
You know, I honestly, like, they always had those, like, informational sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, TIAA-CREF did a great job of communicating what was possible with their service. And I only went to one or two of the information sessions ever, once very early on to find out what it was all about, and another time just to talk about some of the like major changes in the market. But they make all of the abilities to make changes to your accounts right online. I mean, you can see it at a glance how your money is done over the years. That I wish my bank was a tenth of the usefulness of the TIAA-CREF website.
Unfortunately, they're not.
No, not at all. And I don't know why. You know, they could offer me more control over my money at my bank, but
God forbid.
yeah, even trying to use you want to talk about open standards. How come Mint, the fabulous Intuit-owned banking application, can connect to 3 or 4 of my accounts, like my credit card, without issue, but my local bank, which is not local at all, it's semi-national, I can't get it to sync without having to reset the account. You know, and it's like, obviously it works sometimes, but why are you making it so difficult for my application to get to it? I'm not saying don't be secure. I'm saying these other people are doing it. They are secure as well. Why is, it's difficult.
It is, and I struggle with that with my mortgage company. It's a very similar kind of scenario where it's a very small mortgage company that I got my mortgage sold to, and I might as well have a mortgage in 1776 because that is the amount of service that they provide me online.
Yeah, you know, and there's definitely a theme with the things that we talk about, and this is one of them. You know, technology mediation. If you can make it easy for me to get to my service and make use of it, that's half of the game. And if you make it difficult for me through a browser to be able to get to what I need and do what I need to do, that's the other half.
You're right.
So once again, just shout out to TIAA-CREF. Thank you so much for your help. And they talked me down off a ledge. I mean, they really did. They made it make sense. They thanked me. Bless you.
Sorry.
They saved me a lot of trouble in taxes. They talked to me about being able to set aside the money that I would owe to the government ahead of time. They explained all the options. They really did a great job.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
All right. Well, we're a little bit after 10. Anything else you want to say tonight?
Thank you for a great 25th episode.
25, man.
That's right.
Cheers. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you. And we will see you all next week for episode 26.
Next week, in which Sean will explain why he's back on Google.
We shall see.
All right. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
See you.